Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Rasulillah. So the first thing that I'll ask is, could everyone who's going to be attending tonight, we can come together here, we can have a section here for the men and a section here for the women, just so that, we want to see one another and try to be in somewhat proximity to one another, alhamdulillah. And we can still social distance and, everything's fine. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah kullu khair. So my name is Fuad Buhari and I'm here on behalf of Sabil community. I also am an instructor with the Majlis here in Southern California, and I will be introducing our beloved Shaykh Walead Mosaad. Shaykh Walead is an Egyptian American scholar and someone who has been of real benefit to our community here in North America for quite some time. He's a graduate of al-Azhar. He also, most recent, graduated from Exeter University with a PhD in Islamic Studies, and has been a part and parcel of a lot of research programs and initiatives worldwide, speaking on behalf of Muslims globally in respects to a number of different topics, including theology, law, legal studies, ethics, and spirituality. So it's a huge blessing to have him here. Just a quick note about Sabil community. Sabil community is actually a community Shaykh Walead launched maybe a few years. Myself and my wife, actually, who's here, are a part and parcel of that community as well. And really, it's designed to try and recapture, I would say, is the essence of the religion, which is the idea of embodying what the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ was actually all about. And at the core of that is love and service. And so what we wanted to try and do was, rather than, as we actually just came back from a retreat, and anybody who's been on a retreat will, you go to a retreat and you're there for a few days, maybe a week, and there are lessons happening and people praying and adhkar happening and constant dua, and you're in suhbah with one another and it's a great environment, and then you leave and you don't really have that anymore, and you have to get back to the hustle and bustle that we're all a part of. And so without having a sort of constant connection to that within a community of people, it feels like these retreats happen, we're able to get something, but then very slowly it fades away. And so what Sabil is really trying to do is create a kind of constancy where, we may have retreats, and we put on, alhamdulillah, retreats globally, here as well as overseas in Egypt, for example. There's a community there that we've already done a couple retreats in. But what we really want to do is try and collectively come together online and in whatever other platform we're able to really cultivate a community around what it means to actually embrace and embody this religious tradition. And so there are classes online. I encourage you to look up Sabil Community on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Shaykh Walead has put on a number of different classes in a variety of different topics, and get engaged. Contact us and inshallah become a part and parcel of what it is that we're doing. So without further ado, inshallah, I'll hand the mic to Shaykh Walead. تفضل مشكور.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجلين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولد آدم ولا فخر محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. So first I'd like to express my gratitude and my pleasure to address you here tonight at MCC San Diego. I haven't been in San Diego probably in a couple of decades, and so it's a great honor to be able to do this tonight. I know on the eve of schools starting again tomorrow, so I know many of you who have young children, and I know how it goes getting ready kids for the next school year, especially in the age of COVID, and I appreciate your attendance nonetheless. So the topic that we've been asked, or that we've decided to speak about, something called husn al-dhan billah, husn al-dhan bi'ibadillah, having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a good opinion of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we live in an age, I think, where we don't quite realize how good we actually have it in terms of ease of life, and things have been made very accessible for us, for most people, especially, I would say, people living in the United States. We have easy access to healthcare and to food and to water. We don't have to walk 3 or 4 miles to find potable water and bring it back to our village so that people have something to drink from and something to wash from, as we've seen in other places in different parts of the world, both in the Muslim world and outside of the Muslim world. And for the most part, we live in aman. Aman means safety. We don't really have to worry about someone knocking on our door, coming to our house, and threatening our lives. Whereas many people in many other different places have such things to contend with, if not periodically, but maybe perhaps even regularly. So we have it quite good, actually. But yet, nevertheless, I think we see that we also have a lot of uncertainty now. And I don't think the pandemic caused it. I think it kind of exposed it. It was something perhaps that was underlying beneath the surface. And now we have and I'm not just speaking about the Muslim community, I'm speaking in general. A lot of anxious people, uncertainty. When is this going to end? And what's it going to look like? Can we ever go back to normal, whatever normal is? Our kids' childhood, is it going to be spoiled forever? Here's, going on probably the second year, almost into the third year that we're contending with this. And, that's kind of a big chunk of a young child, a young person's life, if they're only 7 or 8 or 9 years old. So it's kind of something maybe that's traumatic. And so I think as a result, sometimes we tend to start to think, well, what's going on? Is there something really wrong with us? Is there something really wrong with the world? Perhaps we might even say or think, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doing it like this? What's the reason, and all those sorts of things. So one of I would say, the asl min usul al-din, from the main principles of the deen, is this idea of having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it sounds kind of strange if you've never heard it phrased like that before. What does that mean to have a good opinion of God, a good opinion of Allah? Is it possible to have a bad opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He is our creator, and He is our maker, and He is the one who basically determines everything about us. So how is it we can have, if there's such thing as a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what's a bad opinion? And this principle, or this asl, we found it throughout the Quran and Sunnah, to the degree that it's such a concept that it's not just based upon one verse or one hadith. It's there so often and so much that you have to have you reach a conclusion that it is hada min ad-din. It is from the deen. It's not just somebody's thesis or somebody's opinion. No, from the deen is to have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some of the hadith mentioned in this regard, probably the one that we heard of before, in the hadith al-Qudsi, that's in Bukhari and Muslim, and in a version of it is in Musnad Ahmad, that says, أَنَا عَنْدَ الظَّنِّ عَبْدِي بِي. At least that first part. وأنا معه حيث ذكرني فإن ذكرني في نفسي ذكرت في نفسي وإن ذكرني في ملأ ذكرت في ملأ خيرا من إلى آخر الحديث. That's one version. I am at the good opinion of my servant. I am with him when he remembers me. And if he remembers me in private, I remember him in private. And if he remembers me in a group, then I remember him in a group greater or better than the group he is in. And if he were to come closer to me, right? شبرا أتيته باعا. If he comes within a arm's length, then I will come closer to him within a distance much greater than this. And if he comes to me crawling, أتيته هرولة. Then I come to him running. So this hadith هذا أصل من الأصول. This particular hadith. So it talks very specifically about having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The version in Musnad Ahmad starts out the same way. أنا ظن بعبدي بي فإن ظن بي خيرا فله ظن بي شرا فعليه أو فله. If he has a good opinion of me, then that will be good for him. And if he has a bad opinion or thinks bad of me, then that will be bad for him. But the first part, أنا ظن عبدي, I am like, or I'm at the point or where my servant has his opinion of me. So then the question becomes, well, what does it mean to have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There are things that Allah knows that we don't know. What's going to happen tomorrow or later tonight? Nobody knows. Nobody can say with any amount of certainty anything about that. The only one who knows for certain is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So any moment beyond the moment we're actually in is unknown to us. And when something is unknown to us, then we don't say we're certain about it. We have a suspicion about it, right? It could be something good or it could be something bad. We don't know exactly. So if the one by whose soul is in his hands, our soul's in his hands, namely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the one who ultimately knows, and I don't know, then I have to lean on or go towards Allah's knowledge of what is going to be or not to be, because I simply don't know that. So my perspective about what's going to happen in the future then is going to be based upon what this thing called dhan, a suspicion, right? And here I don't mean suspicion in the pejorative or the negative sense, but suspicion to suspect something in a general sense. So I can think good things are going to happen, or I can think bad things are going to happen. On what basis will I think good things are going to happen? On what basis am I going to think bad things are going to happen? So if I have a negative outlook based upon what I think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but based upon something not about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, maybe I look at my circumstances, or I look at the world, I say, oh, it's pretty bad, and it's horrible, and all I expect is things to be horrible. And then I have a negative outlook. Even though the future that I'm thinking about, that has not yet to pass, I am passing a judgment upon it. But based upon what? Suspicion, right? It's not knowledge. Or if I base it upon what I know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather than what I suspect from the basic premise of the surroundings or of the circumstances, then I might have a good opinion rather than a bad opinion. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the hadith Qudsi, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي, I am at the good opinion of my servant, means if you think good things are going to happen, then inshallah, good things will happen. And if you think bad things are going to happen to you, then likely, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then bad things may happen to you. One of the great of the Ummah, who embodied the Quran and Sunnah, who took this principle, this asl min al-usul, right, this kind of tawheedic spiritual principle, call it, psychological principle. He took it and he expanded the meaning of it, right, and he lived it and he explored it. So Ibn Ata al-Sikandari, what did he say specifically about husn dhan billah? He said, إن لم تحسن ظنك به من أجل وصفه فحسن ظنك به من أجل معاملته معك فهل عودك إلا حسنا وهل أسدى إليك إلا مننا. In Arabic, so he said, if you don't have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala من أجل وصفه, because of his attributes and what you know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then at least have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based upon your experience with him. For has he not gotten you accustomed to goodness and excellence And has He not sent your way except things that you should be grateful for? So He's describing here kind of two approaches. One is kind of a higher level approach, and one is a little bit lower than that. They're both good though. The first one, min ajil wasfihi. Why don't you have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from what you know about Him? What is it that we know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What does He say about Himself? He says, sabaqat rahmati ghadabi. My mercy has preceded my wrath. And when we begin any matter of importance, what do we say? We say, Bismillahi ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We don't say, Bismillahi al-Jabbar al-Muntaqim. Or Bismillahi hatta al-Aziz al-Mutakabbir. No, we say, Bismillahi ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So He is Rahman and He is Rahim. And even the understanding of Rahmah is multivaried here. Right? Because Rahman is different than Rahim. Some say, Huwa Rahman al-Dunya wa Rahim al-Akhirah. He is the Rahman of the dunya. All of the mercy found in the dunya comes from His attribute of being Rahman. And everything that comes from the good of the Akhirah, which is 99 parts of 100 versus 1 part of 100, which is in the dunya, that's His Rahman from His being Rahim. So these are indications that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yuridu bina al-usr. يريد بكم العسر ولا اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر. Another verse of the Quran. Allah seeks and desires ease for you, and He does not desire difficulty. وما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج. And He has not put undue burdens upon you. So, the deen is not here to make us miserable and to make us uptight and to make us irritable and to make us angry at the world. If that's what Islam is doing for us, if that's how our approach to the deen is going, then we're not doing it right. Look at all the difficulties in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ كَانَ يَتَفَاءَلِ الْخَيْرِ. He was always having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was always looking to the positive side of things. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to His servants in the Quran? To the Prophet ﷺ, He says, قُلْ عِبَادِي. Say to the servants, my servants, كل عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم. Those who went outside of bounds upon themselves, transgressed against themselves. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا. لا تقنطوا. Don't go into a state of qunut, بالطاء. Don't go into a state of absolute despair because of your sins. Why? Why would I not do that? لأن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, من أجل وصفه, what we know about Him, His attributes, He can forgive all of your sins. And He gives us multiple opportunities for our sins to be forgiven, from one Jum'ah to the next Jum'ah, from one prayer, between one prayer to the next, your sins are forgiven. You can think of it like a running counter. You may mess up a little bit, but it gets reset all the time. It's getting set back to zero all the time. So it never really gets that bad if you're doing the other things, if you're striving, if you're trying to make the most of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. And so with such a merciful God, with such a merciful God in charge of all of our affairs, why would we not have hope? Why would we not be hopeful? Why would we not have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? One of the other sages, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he was asked about people who see things that come their way in the life in this dunya as punishments. And many of us, I think we have this, to use kind of modern way of looking at things, we have this toxic relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not toxic from Allah to us, but we make it toxic from us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so sometimes we tend to kind of try to strike deals with Allah. We're negotiating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we try to negotiate kind of, okay, I want certain things in my life to go my way in this particular way, and I'll do the things you ask. I'll pray and I'll fast and everything, but I'm really interested in you giving me the things that I want in this life. And then if those things are not forthcoming in the way that I want, even though I make dua for it and I plead and I'm lots of dua and supplication doesn't come my way, then I begin to say, oh, Allah doesn't hear me. He's not listening. That's very toxic to think that about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Huwa as-sami'ul alim. There's nothing that He doesn't hear. He hears you before you even say it. He hears your thoughts. He is the maker of your thoughts. So how can He not be hearing you? Allah yasma'akum. Right? Allah hears you. And the Prophet ﷺ, he even said to some of the Sahaba, you're not supplicating to someone who's deaf. You don't have to yell when you're asking. Right? Just ask. Right? And that's why he said, أجملوا في الطلب. أجملوا في الطلب. Make the talab, make the way that you request it beautiful. That's the etiquette with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the ways that you make the way that you request with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beautiful is to leave the answer up to Him. To not be invested in a particular outcome. Because as we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says from the hadith that there are three outcomes for your dua. Either Allah can give it to you right away, in the moment, and some people have that. في ناس مستجاب الدعوة. There's some people who, and Allah, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this about some people. He said, people who are virtually unknown and no one pays attention to them. لو أقسم الله لأبره. Right? If he were to swear by Allah, then he would fulfill his oath. That's the maqam, that's the place he has with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's some people like that. Mujab al-da'wah. The prophets were mujab al-da'wah. The prophets they asked for something, Allah gave it to them. Maybe in the moment, maybe a bit later, but they were mujab al-da'wah. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can choose to delay the fulfillment of what you're asking until sometime later. Maybe even in the akhirah, maybe in the next life. And that's not actually a bad outcome. That's even a better outcome than having fulfilled in the dunya, because what it looks like in the akhirah is something completely different. Or Allah can give you something better than it. Allah can give you something better than the thing that you asked for. Maybe you are looking for a particular, job or university degree or marriage prospect or whatever it might be, go a particular way. And it didn't go the way that you had expected or the way that you wanted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that He has something better. So when things like that don't go our way, it shouldn't cause us to have despair. We should, if we were not invested so much in the outcome, but invested in the seeking to begin with. Our asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the result. Our, what we say, making tafweed of putting complete agency in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to answer what we are asking for in the way that He wants, that's in of itself is the result. That in of itself is a type of ghina, right? It's a type of sustainability and it's a type of sufficiency. Khalas, let Allah decide. Let Him decide how it's going to be. And that's why, if you look at the supplications of the Prophet ﷺ, they were all quite general. In the sense, rarely did he ask for something specific. Most of the time he would be asking, اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. For example, give us the good of this life and the good of the next life, and keep us away from the hellfire. وَعَنِّنَا عَلَى ذِكْرِكَ وَشُكْرِكَ وَحُسْنِ عِبَادَتِكَ. Allah, help us to remember You and to be grateful to You and to worship You. Right? Look at the dua in the Fatiha. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ. Right? Guide us, keep us on the straight path. And so those are the best type of dua. And one of the ones that's kind of shamil, that's comprehensive, if you say something like, اللهم أسألك من كل خير سألك نبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأعوذ من كل شر استعاذك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. I ask you all the good things that your Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم asked you of, and I seek refuge from all of the bad things that he sought refuge from. You covered the gamut, you've covered everything if you do that. However, when we start to ask for specific things and we're invested in a particular outcome, the adab or the etiquette of seeking that is al-istikhara. Istikhara means that you want this thing to happen, or you're hoping to happen, but you're seeking it to be a good thing. Right? And so the sigha, the way you ask is different. So in the dua al-istikhara, we would say, Ya Allah, in kunta ta'lamu hadha al-amr khayran li ولذريتي والأحباب المسلمين في ديننا ودنيانا وأخرانا ومعادنا وعاشنا وعاقبة أمورنا آجله وآجله فاقدره لي ثم بارك لنا فيه وإن كنت تعلم أن هذا الأمر شرا لي ولذريتي والأحباب المسلمين في ديننا وأخرانا ومعادنا وعاقبة أمورنا وآجله وآجله فاصرفه عني واصرفنا عنه ثم ردني به, or something like that. Oh Allah, if you know that this matter is going to be good for me and my children, my progeny, and my loved ones, and Muslims in general, and it's going to be good for me in my dunya and in my akhirah, and in my ma'isha, my life, the life of this life, and my ma'ad, and the life of the next life, both immediately and in the long term, if it's going to be good in all those things, فَقْدِرْهُ لِي, then, decree it for me. But if you know, or obviously you do know, that this matter is not going to be like that, it's going to be bad for me, or bad for my family, or bad for my loved ones, or bad for Muslims in general, in both this life and in the next life, and in the near term and in the long term, فَاصْرِفْهُ عَنِّي وَاصْرِفْنِي عَنْهُ ثُمَّ رَضِّنِي بِهِ فَاصْرِفْنِي عَنْهُ, take me away from it and take that thing away from me. ثُمَّ رَضِّنِي بِهِ, then give me the contentment with that particular decree. That's for specific things. I want to marry this person, I want to move to this place. Things that are in general permissible, but you don't know either way whether it's going to be better for you or not better for you. This was the Sahaba. This is what the Prophet ﷺ taught them. And they said about the Prophet ﷺ, the Nabi ﷺ, كَانْ يُعَلِّمُنَا الْإِسْتِخَارَ فِي كُلِّ شيء. He used to taught us and he extolled us to do the istikhara in everything. So if we do the istikhara in everything, then we've covered all of our bases. This mosquito doesn't want to leave me alone. Anyway, khair, it's fine. That's his nasib, my blood. So this husn al-dhan billah, right, having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, means that we have to develop a nice and good relationship with Allah. If we rarely speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you could be praying 5 times a day and you're coming to the masjid, but you're not really engaging with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It means in your down moments and in your up moments, in times when you're feeling it and times when you're not feeling it, the first place that you turn is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you're engaging, right? You're having this munajah. That's what they call the prayer, a munajah, like a conversation only between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَاذْكُرُنِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. And you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's remembering you. Your remembrance of Him is in fact His remembrance of you. Your pleading with Him is actually Him seeking you. Your seeking of Him is actually Him seeking you. Then you begin to see the inner reality of things. Then you have a more healthy relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather than one that I would call toxic, and it's transactional, and you want to do certain things and see certain returns, right? People put money in the stock market, invest in Apple, Google, Facebook, and they want to see 25 and 30% returns in the next 3 months or the next 3 days, some people, and if they don't see that, they get all disturbed and it's horrible and what's going on and how come this is happening to me? Very transactional, right? We're not investing in the prayer, or investing in fasting, or investing in zakah, and then we're waiting to see the returns that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The investment is the prayer itself. That's the return. What Allah gave you, He gave you the ability to pray. He gave you وَفَقَقَ لِذَلِكَ. He is the one who gave you divine success in doing it. That's your return. What would you want than that? And that's a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with you and that He's pleased with you. The fact that you're asking, the fact that you're thinking about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are all signs that you have a good relationship with Allah. So there is another khabar, I think Ibn Mas'ud said, he said, there's nothing more powerful and more important or more fulfilling than having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Always looking, and we define good opinion of Allah as hoping that in the future, whether it be the near term or the distant future, that whatever is going to come about is going to be good for you. because it's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even it might be a trial or tribulation, or even it might be some sort of loss, but ultimately you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يُرِيدُ بِكَ الْيُسْرِ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكَ الْعُسْرِ, as the Quran says. He seeks ease and facilitation. He seeks good for you, and He doesn't seek difficulties and trials for you. And if a trial and tribulation comes our way, then that could also be good. If it brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that trial, that mana, هو عين العطاء. So what you see as deprivation could actually be a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what you see as a gift in terms of material ease and wealth and so forth can actually be deprivation if it takes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the criteria is not material gain or lack thereof or loss thereof, but does it bring you closer to God? Are you fulfilling the rights and the responsibilities associated with that particular thing? Like if you have enough wealth, are you paying this or you're not doing that? Or is it taking you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is it bringing you to Allah? Then we call that a ni'mah, we call that a blessing. And it could be material wealth, it could be material loss. But if it's a ni'mah, if it brings you closer to Allah. And it's a niqmah, or it's a fitna, right? It's a trial and tribulation if it takes you away from the deen. The worst type of fitna is al-fitna fi deen, is a fitna in your deen. To lack certainty, to lack certitude, to have this, what I described as sort of this toxic relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these things are fitan. So husn al-dhan billah, as we mentioned, is important. And it's something probably most of us, including myself, we have to work on. Right? It's easy to get down, and it's easy to kind of see the negativity and the darkness in things. And no one is denying that there's not negative things and there's darkness in the world. Certainly there is. And the Quran clearly states that Allah وَلِيُّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَوْلِيَاءُهُمُ الطَّاغُوتُ يُخْرِجُونَهُم مِّنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ. Allah is the wali, He is the guardian protector of the believers. He takes them out of the dhulumat, of the darknesses, multiple, right, plural, because there's different type of darknesses. إِلَى النُّورِ, into the light of hidayah, the light of guidance, the light of tawfiq, the light of divine success, the light of inayah, the light of divine care, and the light of wilayah, right, the light of divine providence. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَوْلِيَاهُمُ الطَّاغُوتُ, and those who disbelieve, their awliya, their guardians and protectors, are this thing called the taghut, which is basically anything that you take as a god other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it's your wealth, it's your success, your own confidence in your own abilities, whatever, all of these could be tawaghit, or it could be another human being. They take them away from the nur, from the light of hidayah and tawfiq and inayah and wilayah, إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ, to the darknesses. So as long as Allah يَتَوَلَّى أَمْرَنَا, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking care of our matter and taking care of us, then we should have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'll end about this particular thing with, I think, something that's important. The Sahaba used to debate, and the ulama used to debate, what is the ayah in the Quran that is most worthy of giving us hope, hope for the future, and the real future, and the akhirah. And some of them said, وَاتَّقُوا النَّارَ الَّتِي أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ, and have fear of the hellfire that has been prepared for those who disbelieve. So it's not talking about the believers. Even if you have one iota of iman in your heart, that hellfire is not made for you. It's made for somebody else. And some of them said, no, there's something that's even more worthy or more powerful in giving us hope in the future, and mainly the verse from Surah Al-Duha, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. So this is speaking to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ directly. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And your Lord will give you and give to you that which will please you. Please whom? Please the Prophet ﷺ. There's really no verse like that, no concept like that anywhere else. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And they said the Prophet ﷺ would not be pleased with any of his ummah being entered into the hellfire. So he will be given a shafa'ah. A shafa'ah al-uzma, right? The greatest shafa'ah, which is to release people from the al-mawqif, al-mahshar, where they're all standing, waiting for the hisab, waiting for the reckoning to begin, and they're all sweating, and some people are, up to their ankles in sweat, and some people up to their knees, and some people up to their chests, and some people up to their necks, and some people submerged completely. And that mawqif al-mahshar will be longer than any of the lifespans we live on this life. Talking a very long time. Until the people start to say, when is this going to end? So they say, let's ask the prophets and messengers, are they not amongst us here fil mahshar? It's all of humanity. So they go to Adam, alayhi salam, and he says, nafsi, nafsi. He said, I ate from the tree and I'm not really in a position to be asking stuff like, not me. They go to Sidna Nuh. He says, nafsi, nafsi, I'm not in a position, I made dua against everybody and it's not going to be right. They asked in Ibrahim, and they said, well, I asked for maghfirah from my father and that wasn't right. And they'll go down the line till they get to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and when they ask him, he says, Ana laha, I am for it. So by his intercession, all of humanity that ever lived will benefit just for the reckoning to begin. And then beyond that, fi shafa'at ukhra, right? There's other intercessions for the believers who might have gone to hellfire, but by the Prophet ﷺ intercession they do not. For the loved ones of the believers who might have gone, but he doesn't want to disappoint us even with our loved ones, and so they too will be helped and so forth. So there's so many things to bring hope and to have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you go to sleep at night having a good opinion of God and He's on your mind, and then you wake up in the morning, He's the first thing on your mind, it's like you have everything you need. So what else do you need besides that? It's a great, great ni'mah and great gift. So the other part that we wanted to talk about, husn al-dhan bi'ibadillah, having a good opinion of the servants of Allah. This one is directly tied to the first concept of having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the servants of Allah, well, we know they're fallible and we know they make mistakes and we know that they don't always have the best of intentions. We just look to ourselves, and we certainly know that to be true about ourselves. So certainly it's going to be true about everybody else. But despite that, why should we have this husn al-dhan, a good opinion of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because it's also from the unknown. You don't know what's in people's hearts. So just like we don't know what the future is going to bring, we don't have certain knowledge about that, so we kind of put agency in Allah to take care of that for us. That's the main concept of the husn al-dhan billah, good opinion of God. Well, what about the people of God? What about the servants of God? Well, we don't know what's in their hearts. All we can see is what they do outwardly. So husn al-dhan then would be not to try to delve into what's in their heart, because you don't have access to that. You don't clearly know that. All you see is outwardly what they do. So if I see them do something outwardly that is not right or is displeasurable or otherwise problematic, what should I do at that particular point? Try to have husn al-dhan, right? What they say, try to find a justification or an exit for why they acted that particular way. Oh, I went to the masjid and the brother didn't give me salam. He gave salam to everybody else. I think he's jealous of me because I just got a new Tesla and he doesn't have one, and so he didn't want to give me salam. So, that's probably what's going on there. Where'd you get all of that from? Right? This is how su' al-dhan works. And, later you find out that, they just had cataract surgery on their eyes and they didn't actually see you. So that's why they didn't give you salam. They weren't seeing properly. And you had all of this su' al-dhan, right? You had all of this, you made this whole scenario in your head for what was going on, and I would say 99 times out of 100, it turns out not to be true. Right? And the Quran says, إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٌ إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٌ. Some of your suspicion can actually be sinful, right? Sinful in and of itself, in that you have this bad opinion of the person. That's sinful and kind of a sin of the heart. Then it can even go beyond that if you act upon it. Right? If you act upon that whole scenario and then you start not talking to them and you start treating them or mistreating them or judging them unfairly, and you actually acted upon your false opinion, then you've compounded the problem. Now you've added acts to what was just mere thoughts. So this idea of having good opinion of others, especially people that you know, people that you have a history with, people that you kind of have a good idea about what makes them tick, and you've had some relationship with them. And I've seen many relationships go sour because they misinterpret or they have a bad opinion about a single incident. And they forget all that happened before. So everything that happened before. Just like when we said about what Ibn Atta said, if you don't have a good opinion because of what you know about Allah, then have a good opinion about what your experience with Allah. Has He not gotten you accustomed to good things most of the time? So why not have a good opinion based upon that? And if you have a relationship with somebody, and based upon your experience of them and experience of others with them, then don't jump to conclusions, right? Don't be so quick to kind of dismiss them, or as we would say today, cancel them, right? Because you think that they did this particular infraction that you may or may not be true, right? We don't act upon something until we have certain or near certain knowledge of it. Most of the stuff circulating around that people say about other people, you can't call it knowledge. All you can call it is suspicion, right? The things you read on your Facebook feed and the things that people tweet, and that most of the time is just opinion, and most of the time it's conjecture, and most of the time it's innuendo and rumor. Most of the time it's not true, right? And especially social media, there's a concerted effort to try to influence your opinion, right? Isn't that what they call people now today? Influencers on Instagram. So if you have 100,000 followers or whatever you have, then you become an influencer. So people are trying to influence you. Why? Because it's profitable to do so. Not just monetarily, but even it's profitable in terms of boosting their ego. People like to see they have followers and likes and retweets and all that sort of thing. And so there's, they'll say something or make an accusation about somebody or something like that because it does attract attention. And people like attention. On the most basic, egoistic level, people love attention. And it's only a refined soul that can move beyond this idea of love of attention of people and seeking the attention and the divine care, inayah, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So most people are not going to be there. Most people are going to throw out all this stuff. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, right? And you should be suspicious. When something comes to you from a dubious source, we should be suspicious about that. That's where the suspicion should be. And this is a Quranic principle. إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. Someone comes you, a dubious source, بنبأ, with some news, فتبينوا. Try to find out what's really going on if you want to act upon it. Because if you do act upon it without verifying what's going on, then you will regret that action you have taken when it turns out you were mistaken about that particular thing. And so this tabayyun, finding out, ascertaining, all that sort of thing, is one thing we could do about innuendo and rumor, if it really means that much to us. And the other thing, which is simpler and easier and perhaps more wise, is to ignore it. Don't pay it any attention. Imam al-Ghazali, he says, مَنْ نَمَّ إِلَيْكَ نَمَّ عَلَيْكَ. مَنْ نَمَّ إِلَيْكَ نَمَّ عَلَيْكَ. So a namima is to make something up about somebody. So if someone comes to you and says, oh, you know what, that friend of yours, blah, 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 he did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you believe that? And you're like, oh, I didn't know. Okay, I didn't think that would have, fine, but okay, what does that mean? But this, if there's nothing backing it, it's called namima. And namima is making stuff up or spreading something that is not veritable, something you don't know to be true. So, man namma ilayka namma alayk. So someone who is quick to do that, they hear something somewhere and they're quick to spread it, then they'll be quick to spread it about you one day too. That's what it means. Man namma ilayka namma alayk. If they're quick to spread about someone who's doesn't mean much to them, then what about you? You probably don't mean much to them either. So they'll be quick to spread it about you too. So the idea then is just to ignore it. Have a filter. We have so many things vying for our attention today that we have to have very strong filter. We got to filter these things out, right? And take in only the things that are veritable, that are verified, that are good, that have meaning, that bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says about conversations with people. He says there's only like 3 things that are good. لا خير في كثير من نجواهم إلا من أمر بصدقة أو معروف أو إصلاح بين الناس. لا خير في كثير من نجواهم. There's not good in their najwa, right, in their secret conversations when people are getting together and talking, except for 3 things. إلا من أمر بصدقة. Someone who is commanding to a sadaqah, charity, good cause. أو معروف. أو معروف. Or calling to the good, calling to the common good, the known good, the verifiable good. That's ma'ruf, right? عرف يعرف معروفا. Ma'ruf means everybody knows it to be good. أو إصلاح بين الناس. أو إصلاح بين الناس. Or to reconcile between people. Anything besides those 3, Allah tells us, forget about it. It will lead to disaster, lead to you being astray. But if you're getting together and someone says, I got to talk to you about something, unless we're talking about sadaqah or ma'ruf, talking about helping someone out charitably, and it could be not money, could be in anything, or ma'ruf, or calling to a good, or to reconcile between people, not interested. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us all and to bless this congregation, this group. I don't want to take too much time, maybe leave some time for questions or comments if people have them. I feel very, very honored to be asked to speak before you, even though I am not someone qualified to do that. But I ask you to have husn al-dhan billah, that somehow I got wound up here, and perhaps for some reason, even though, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, سَيُصْلَحْ هَذَا الدِّينَ بِالرَّجُلِ الْفَاجِرِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring rectification even via a corrupt person. So it's our hope, inshaAllah, that be the case at least. فنسأل سبحانه وتعالى لنا ولكم التوفيق والسداد. الحمد لله رب العالمين وبارك الله فيكم. Yes. And I think that's a good way to look at it. Sometimes people think istikhara, you do it and then there should be some sort of, light bulb that goes up and like, yes, this is the right way, I'm going to go do that. And that may happen, we're not saying that doesn't happen. But literally, istikhara means to seek the good of something. So if that thing is not supposed to happen, it's not going to happen. So it means I tell people just, continue to try to pursue that thing. And if it's meant for you to happen, it's meant to happen. Because you've done your istikhara, right? You've said, I seek the good of it. And they say, التيسير من علامات الإذن. So facilitation is a sign of permission, of divine permission. So if all the doors are opening for you and it's going pretty well and it's like all the boxes are being checked and everything is fine, then it's a sign that Allah is facilitating this for you. And the opposite is true. If, despite your best efforts and like 2 million people getting involved in this particular thing, but it's still not happening, it's not working, doors are closed, it's just not going anywhere, then maybe Allah doesn't want that for you and He wants something else. But since you've done your istikhara in your heart and you asked Allah to show you and to guide you to it if it's good, then feel confident and feel comfortable that, placing your trust in Allah at that point, inshallah. Yes. There's an imam, he's called Imam al-Suhra. The question was, can you do istikhara, not for something specific, but like you're doing something, you just want the good of it, and so forth. Imam al-Suhrawardi in his book Awarif al-Ma'arif, he says that the Salaf used to do istikhara every day. So like a general istikhara. So you begin your day, you pray Salat al-Duha, and then after that, you make your istikhara, and you say, you know, Allah, if you, what you know min sa'ir al-umur wal-ashya', what you know about everything about me, and that how this day is going to progress, then, you know, lead me to that which is good if it's in your knowledge, and make me, you know, easy, facilitate for me. And that which you know not to be good, then keep it away from me. And that's, I recommend that. It's a very, very good general practice. You just, because the Sahaba said, al-istikhara fi kulli shi', istikhara in everything. So literally it means seeking the good. It doesn't have to be a decision-making thing about one or two things, but before you get out and start your day, get out to work, get out to school, get out whatever you're going to do, whatever responsibilities that you may have, say, Ya Allah, astakhirak. You know, I'm seeking the good of whatever it might be. And, you know, هذا شيء مجرب, يعني. It's something that people have done and tried, and they've seen the results. So I highly recommend that for people to do that, inshallah. And it's very simple. You just pray 2 or 4 rak'ah after sunrise, 15 or 20 minutes after sunrise, and then read the dua, and then go on your day. That's a good point. So, good opinion of themselves. What we mean by self here. So, we usually say ittiham al-nafs or muhasabat al-nafs. So, muhasabat al-nafs means taking the self into account. So, that means being actually a little bit more strict about your motivations and your intentions, and not just giving yourself a free pass, but also not to the degree that it paralyzes you, right? Where you're so doubtful about your intentions and everything that you just don't do anything. No, we tell people do the thing, but always check your intention and motivation, and always try to improve upon it. And, you know, some of them said, how do you have, you know, how do one have such good relations with people? How do you have good relations with people? What's the secret? What's the key? And one of them said, كنت مع الخلق أو كنت مع الناس على نفسي. أكون مع الناس على نفسي. In other words, I am on the side of the people against myself. So I don't take the side of myself in something that's a dispute or anything like that. No, I'm on the other side. So if they say something like, you did this, this, and this, okay, I'm on your side. Maybe that's true then, and let me check myself and see. Rather than the knee-jerk reaction would be, you know what you're talking about. You know, you just don't like me, and none of that is true. And no, Salihin, when someone says something to them that is negative, they consider it. No matter how outlandish or preposterous or it might be, because there might be a grain of truth to it. Maybe the way it was presented, the way it was said wasn't the nicest of ways, but that doesn't stop them from considering it and saying, okay, perhaps there's something about that. Jazakallah khair, thank you for bringing that to my attention, and so forth. So, أكون مع الناس على نفسي. Yes. Mm-hmm. They're going to make the adhan. Do we have a few minutes after? 1 minute? Okay, in 1 minute. Yeah, we shouldn't be fooled by things, but let's say there's 2 things here. There's kind of what we act upon, what we do, and what we feel in our heart. We cannot be fooled by someone in terms of, you know, let's say I go into business with somebody and it went really bad and they're dishonest and all that. And then they, you know, leave and come back and say, oh, let's do this again. I'm like, certainly not. But that doesn't preclude me from having a good opinion in my heart of that person. Because there's a possibility he's changed his ways, or she changed their ways, or they're a different person, or they've repented, or they've done something different. And I hold out that possibility in my heart. And in fact, I should believe that's what happened. But that doesn't mean that I have to fall into the same thing again. I can say, thank you, I'm just not interested, but Allah yuwaffaqak. May Allah give you success. Allahu a'lam. So we'll stop here. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you all for listening. May Allah bless you all and give you peace and guidance and ease in everything that you do. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina al-Mursaleen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of MCC, Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. May Allah reward you, inshallah, for coming here. So thank you, Sister Parmul and Shaykh Jamal, for bringing him the Imam here. May Allah reward you, Jami'an Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الله أكبر الله